Continuing our buyer's informational video series, I wanted to review and discuss how agents are paid in a transaction. And compensation can come from several different parties in a transaction. As of August 2024, a new law was passed in New Jersey where buyers must sign a buyer's agency agreement prior to viewing any properties with a real estate agent. And in the previous video, I discussed the buyer's agency agreement, and I will link it down below again. In the buyer's agency agreement, it outlines the fee that the buyer and the buyer's agent have agreed if the buyer purchases a property. If they purchase a property and the seller is not offering any compensation to a buyer's agent, then the fee that's outlined in the buyer's agency agreement is the fee that the buyer's agent can collect at the closing. So in the buyer's agency agreement, it outlines the fee that that agent and that buyer have agreed to, that if they do purchase a property, that is the fee the buyer's agent will collect. Now, some sellers may pay compensation. So if they are paying compensation, then the fee is coming from them. That fee that they're paying cannot exceed what is in the buyer's agency agreement. So if the buyer's agency agreement has a certain amount on that and the seller's offering a certain amount, if the agent can only collect the amount that's on the buyer's agency agreement that the buyer and the buyer's agent have agreed to. And down below, you'll find a link to the buyer's agency agreement to review all that. If you're not sure, you can look at the previous video where I went a little further in depth into the buyer's agency agreement. In New Jersey, compensation can be paid by both buyer and seller. So an agent can collect a fee from both the buyer's agent, a buyer's agent can collect a fee from both the buyer and the seller in a real estate transaction. That was changed in 2024. Prior to that, only one party could pay the fee. So in some situations, if the seller is not paying compensation, then the fee will come from the buyer if it's agreed upon in the buyer's agency agreement. If the fee is being paid by the seller before we show a property, we'll find out if the compensation is being paid by the seller. If it is being paid by the seller, then it cannot exceed what is agreed to on the buyer's agency agreement. Also, in the buyer's agency agreement, part of that document says that the buyer can authorize the buyer's agent when they make an offer to have any offer include compensation paid by the seller. So even though we find out the seller is not willing to pay a fee, you might say, you know what, I still want to make the offer and I want my buyer's agent to be paid as part of that offer. Well, as a buyer, you have to authorize that to the agent when they write the contract. So that's outlined below. But compensation can come from both the buyer side or the seller side in a transaction. This is a relatively, that's always been the case in certain cases, but it's become more prevalent in 2024 when all the law changes and there's been a lot of news headlines around the country regarding fees and transparency. So before you view any properties, you'll know exactly what the fees are that are involved in the purchase. If you have any further questions about this, you can reach out to me anytime at walter@livingonthehudson.com. And down below, I have a link to the buyer's agency agreement so you can review that again. Once again, walter@livingonthehudson.com or at 347-448-3766. Have a great day.